Good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of today's recording is to review end user training for Zoom Phone for the University of Southern California. My name is Paul Rayson. I am your education CSM as well as your trainer for today's presentation. Let me briefly share my screen. All right, so to set the stage here for everyone, here are some meeting logistics. Ultimately, this is a sit back, listen, and learn. Slides will be shared, training will be recorded. Q&A is going to be available in the chat, as well as some dedicated time at the end. And then phone numbers are currently either being ported or have already been finalized as ported. Should you have any questions on that, just run through your standard operating procedures internally over at USC, and a member from the USC team will be happy to assist. From an agenda flow perspective, we're going to be covering using Zoom Phone, the Zoom mobile application, setting up Zoom Phone, emergency services, and then wrapping up with resources and support, and then final thoughts and Q&A. So let's start with the desktop client. Now, there are going to be three broad topics that we're going to be covering here today on the utility of Zoom Phone. The first is going to be the desktop client. We'll then talk about the Zoom mobile application, and then we'll wrap up with the Zoom web portal. Each of those three topics tie nicely together in terms of the overall usability of Zoom Phone, but they have subtle and distinct differences as well as some parity between each. And I'm going to kind of go through each of those here together through our training session. Now, in reference to the desktop client, the best way to describe the desktop client, it's the tool that you're going to be using every single day to make and receive phone calls, leverage some of your scheduled meetings, launch a new or existing meeting already in session. And it's going to be an application that you'll need to download to your computer. The location for downloading the Zoom desktop client is available at zoom.us/download, and it should be titled Zoom Client for Meetings. Don't let that deter you. It is encompassing of Zoom Phone. So just a little naming convention there for you just to note it does include Zoom Phone, although it says Zoom Client for Meetings. And as a quick little disclaimer here as well, like any application that you download on your computer, you must be logged in to the Zoom desktop client app in order for you to use Zoom Phone. So just a little something to note there as far as the usability of the application for your day-to-days. On the right-hand side is a brief little screenshot of the desktop client. Now, you'll first need to authenticate in through SSO using your NetID credentials as well as password from USC. Once you've logged in, you're going to see the screenshot on the right-hand side that I have provided for you. And we're currently on the home screen. On the home screen, you'll see the ability to launch a new meeting, otherwise known as an instant meeting. This isn't something already scheduled. This would just be like an ad hoc meeting on the fly. If you would like to join an existing meeting already in session, a webinar already in session, and you have those meeting ID credentials, you can click the join button and then paste in those meeting ID credentials and then proxy into that live session. You'll also have the ability to view your meeting schedule. And then on the right-hand side here, you'll see your upcoming queue of all your meetings for that given day. Now, we don't have the ability to filter to like multiple days or weeks. It'll just be your scheduled meetings for the day, but just something to note there from a user interface perspective to keep you honest throughout your day-to-days. On the top right-hand side, you'll see your profile icon, and you'll see this little green circle here. That is what we call a status. So we'll cover a little bit more about statuses in a moment, but below your profile icon, you will see this settings gear. When you click that settings gear, it's going to open up the window that you see here, screenshot. It'll have your name at the top and then some advanced settings, which we'll cover in a moment. But here are some of those statuses that I was briefly mentioning earlier. Green means go. Green means you're available for a phone call to be brought into a meeting. And this would allow users just to know the status of what you are when you are logged in to the desktop client. Below that is away. So you could change your status to away if, let's say, you need to step away from your computer for a given period of time. It just provides an indicator for users when they search you or see you, when they see that away status with the clock next to your icon, just lets them know that you're logged into the desktop application for Zoom, but you're not actively at your computer. Third is do not disturb. So a use case for do not disturb would be during your lunchtime If you need to take 30, 45 minutes, or maybe you're stepping away from your computer for an extended period of time, you can set a do not disturb marker there for any period of time or a period of days if you so choose. And what that's going to do is allow you to stay logged into the desktop client. However, you won't have any incoming calls coming to you. You won't have any meeting requests in terms of people trying to request you into a meeting for an instant meeting or otherwise. It just mutes all of the Zoom notifications that may be happening for that given period. If you're going to be managing a call queue, these have already been assigned to you. So you would just need to do a quick little click of the gear here for the settings under your profile. And then you'll already see pre-populated for you the call queues that you've been assigned. It could be one or it can be many. When you are ready to work that call queue based on the period of time you may be working it, you'll find the call queue. So for example, if I'm going to be working in the billing queue, I would find the billing queue, I would take the toggle and I would slide it to the right. From there, automatically, you'll be able to receive active phone calls for that given call queue. At the end of your workday, when you're finished working on that call queue, you would simply go back into the settings gear, find the billing queue that you were just working, and then click and hold that toggle and slide it to the left, and you will no longer receive active call queues, active calls for that call queue. Next, I would like to talk briefly about some of the settings here. Now, these are unique to the desktop client. There are some additional settings that we'll talk about when we get to the web portal, but these will be unique for the desktop client for your day-to-days. So let's take a few seconds here to talk about those. When you click the settings button from that settings gear that I just showed you, you'll see new options available from general all the way down to web accessibility. And we'll start here with audio. The audio here will allow you to configure your speaker as well as your microphone inputs and outputs. It will default to your computer's local speaker as well as your computer's local microphone, but clicking the down caret here, you can add a custom one as you so choose if you have an external microphone and or speaker. Best practice would be to make sure that you do test that speaker as well as test that microphone just to make sure the input and output levels are reacting accordingly. Below that is suppress background noise, so it does default to auto. However, this would be a great opportunity for you to evaluate kind of the background environment that you're in. Let's say you're working in a hybrid environment where maybe you're going to an office and it's quite noisy. You may want to set that to high. Or if you're in a nice medium quiet environment, you can probably set that to medium or low. If you're like me and you don't want to have to think about it, I would just recommend setting this to auto. And the beauty is through AI technology, through the speaker and microphone, through the desktop client, it's going to automatically detect background noise and then suppress it for you while in a meeting and or a phone call. Next is the phone tab. So this will include your direct phone number at the top. The default for calls will be the Zoom desktop client. So just make sure that you don't change that. Otherwise, you may not be able to make or receive phone calls. Below that is hide incoming calls while in a meeting. This is a setting that is defaulted to off, but I would heavily recommend turning it on and checking the box here. What this essentially will do is when you are in a meeting and or webinar, either presenting or coming in as a participant, if someone were to call you while you were in that meeting and or webinar, it's going to hide that incoming call so it doesn't provide any meeting or webinar disruption. At the conclusion of that meeting or webinar, you will see an indicator for a missed call, as well as another indicator for a voicemail if one has been left. Below that is location permission. So this would be another setting to enable. Location permission will allow Zoom to access your location for the purposes of routing emergency services to your location. In a preceding slide, we'll talk a little bit more about that location permission setting, as well as the question hover text here. Now, we were formerly on the home screen. We checked out the settings gear here. We went into the settings. Now, I want to briefly discuss the phone option here as an add-on to the desktop client. On the left-hand side, you're going to see your history for all your incoming calls, outgoing calls, as well as any calls that you had missed. And when you hover your cursor over a line item for a phone call, whether it was missed, outbound, or otherwise, you can click this three-dot ellipses here, which will provide additional options to you. You can send a message to that user, you can copy the number, you can block that phone number, mark it as spam, you could delete that entry, or you could clear all call history. Next is the voicemail section, and we have a few dedicated slides on this, but very similar if you had missed a phone call and let's say someone left a voicemail. Part here, the section here where you see that number 4 in a red circle, you'll have a similar indicator here next to voicemail and the number to indicate that a new voicemail or quantity of voicemails have been received to your Zoom phone number. On the right-hand side, you'll also see the dial pad. So you can click any of these numbers here and then click the blue phone button to outbound call. You also have the ability to enter in the name or number for a user over at USC. We have a contact directory sync integrated with Zoom Phone. So you don't have to worry about memorizing phone numbers anymore. I know there's quite a large amount of users over at USC. So you could do one of two things. You could simply just put in their first name, or you could put a combination of first name and then start typing their last, and it'll operate just like a Google search. It'll pull up everyone that meets that search criteria from the directory sync with USC via the Zoom desktop application. And then you can select the contact that you're looking to make a phone call to. Below that is your caller ID. So this is going to be the phone number when you are making outbound calls that will show to that particular person that you are trying to reach. We'll discuss lines in just a moment. That's where you're going to see your line, your personal line, as well as any shared lines that have been delegated to you. And then we'll briefly talk about SMS text messaging. Here's another screenshot here of the call history. So we talked a little bit about blocking phone calls for this given user with area code 530. If you hover your cursor over that item and click the three-dot ellipses, navigate down to block caller, this gives you two options for blocking that user. The first is you can flag it as spam. This provides a prompt and record that will go to our product engineering team over at Zoom. And when we make future releases, we make sure that we address those spam blocked numbers. And then you can also block a caller for other reasons. It doesn't allow you to specify what those other reasons are, but if at any point in time you need to block a phone number beyond a spam call, you do have the other reasons option available to you. When we get to the web portal, I'll show you where those block calls for other reasons will live and how you can remove those numbers if you made a mistake. Next is the voicemail tab. So it works just like a traditional voicemail that you may receive, let's say on your phone, for example. It'll have the user's name if they are a USC employee. It'll then have the extension of that user, date and timestamp, and then a transcription of the voicemail. You can call that user back, play that voicemail, click and hold that blue circle to fast forward or rewind through that transcription. And then clicking the three-dot ellipses here allows you to view that profile of that user. So for example, if Tyler's name doesn't ring a bell here and you want a little bit more detail on who Tyler is before either calling them back or viewing the transcription, you could click that three-dot ellipses and then view profile, and then it'll give you a little bit more detail on that user based on what's provided through the contact directory sync with Zoom and USC. Furthermore, you can copy that phone number, you can download it, save it to your computer, and then you could show it in your computer's Finder. You could outright delete it, or you could delete all your voicemails. Under the Lines tab, you're going to see your line at the very top, and below is any shared lines that may have been delegated to you. This would be most relevant for really two use cases. The first is for executive assistants. So if you're going to be making and placing calls on behalf of someone else, that secondary individual needs to give you line delegation access to their Zoom phone number as a shared line such that you can actually reach out on behalf of that person. Once that has been set up, and I'll provide a brief tutorial on that in just a moment when we get to the web portal, when you log into the desktop client, you will see under the shared section any additional shared lines that have been delegated to you. Now, if I take one step back here under the caller ID section, there's this little down caret So this will default to your direct number, but if you have a shared line that has been delegated to you with the privilege of outbound calling on their behalf, you would click that down caret and it's going to open up the caller ID window for you. Again, your number will be the default, but since I have a shared line with Tyler, I can also toggle between my line and Tyler's line for outbound calls. Next is SMS text messaging. So works just like a traditional text message that you guys would be sending in your day-to-days on your phone or even on your computer. And that's going to live in the SMS tab of Zoom Phone. You would click the pencil notebook icon, enter in the user's name, type in a little message here below, or you can attach a file and they'll send that over in real time. Two quick call outs here regarding SMS text messaging. Zoom Phone is for work-related activities and falls under the USC acceptable use policy. Furthermore, USC admins and owners do have the ability to monitor Zoom Phone and SMS logs. Just want to take a quick moment to call that out. So how to create a new SMS text message. Pencil icon, type in the user's name, works just like a Google search. We're going to type a quick little note here to Sophia. Then we're going to pull in a little file here to send to Sophia. It'll then be received in real time to Sophia's mobile device. Sophia can then reply back to us on their mobile, and you will receive that message back within the SMS function of Zoom Phone. So let's talk a little bit about the active call workflows. When you receive a phone call, you're going to see a little red and blue icon, red being decline or hang up, blue being accept. So when you click that blue phone to accept an incoming call, that call is going to move into the lines section. And once that active call has been triggered, you do have some additional settings that'll be available to you. You could mute yourself while on that phone call if you need to talk to someone to the left or right of you. You could access the keypad. You could put this to a speaker mode. You could also add in additional callers. So a neat piece of functionality for Zoom Phone is that as long as the person that you're speaking with is also a Zoom Phone user, you can add up to 3 people to that phone call. And then after that third, if you want to add in a 4th user and they are a USC Zoom user, you'll be able to automatically elevate that elevate that phone call to a meeting. You could place users on hold. You could do a transfer. So if a user had called in and you're working a call queue and you need to transfer that user to someone else, you could simply click the transfer button here and then search for the user to then pass that user off to the person they were looking to reach. Currently, we do not have record available for Zoom Phone for USC, but adjacent to that is the meet button. So again, as long as you're speaking to someone that is a Zoom user from USC, you could elevate that phone call to a meeting 1-to-1, or if you've reached the max capacity to adding people into a phone call, which is 3, on that 4th person, it'll automatically elevate to a meeting for you. Clicking the 3-dot ellipses here on the bottom right allows you to park a call, which is to place it on hold for another user to pick up. You can invite that user to a meeting, or if you just don't like the complete large size of the active call, you can actually minimize or shrink the size of your phone calls, which will shrink the view that you see here on the right. At the top, you will see the Contacts tab here. As discussed, you have an Active Directory sync with USC and Zoom, which will allow you to simply navigate to the Contacts tab and search for a USC contact with either their first name, last name, last name together, or maybe a few digits of their phone number. And again, it'll operate just like a Google search based on the entries you're providing in the search field. We talked earlier a little bit about statuses when in the desktop client. If you notice here on this example, this user here has the video conferencing icon here as their status. And if you go to the left-hand side here, you'll see another example where it'll have that video conferencing icon in red, and then an automatic status, which will show that they're in a Zoom meeting. Now, if they were presenting, so this would likely imply that this user is just attending a meeting. However, if they were presenting either through Microsoft Documents, PowerPoint, Google Slides, etc., it'll show the status as presenting with the video conferencing icon on. So quick little good way for you to just understand maybe the statuses of someone currently and if they're presenting or just attending a meeting. You'll also likely see this green rectangle here, which does say available. This is different from the green circle that we covered earlier. That green circle indicates that they are logged into the desktop client and available for a phone call or a meeting, whereas this rectangle in green indicates that they're available, but they're not logged into the desktop client on their computer. They're available, but they're on their mobile device for Zoom Phone. So just something to be aware of there as a subtle difference. Clicking the three-dot ellipses here provides additional options for you. You can invite that user to a meeting. You could place a Zoom phone call. You could star this contact, which will go under your contact section here, and then under the starred section, which will be located at the top. You could block that contact as needed, or you could delete that contact as well. At the very top here, you do see notify me when available. So if we hovered our cursor over this offline user here and we click that three-dot ellipses, if you wanted to know when this user comes back online, you could click notify me when available. And the next time that that user changes their status from offline to available, whether mobile device or on the desktop client through the green circle, you will then receive a prompt letting you know that that user is now active and ready to be reached. That covers the desktop client. As a quick overview, that is going to be the application that you'll download on your computer for Zoom. It already has everything baked into it in terms of your call queue management, those that will be managing call queues. It already has a lot of the nuts and bolts configured already for you from your Zoom admins over at USC. It'll also include the ability to launch meetings, whether those are instant or already in session. And then it gives you, again, the ability to manage your Zoom phone calls through active call workflows and everything in between. It's the tool that you'll be using every day on your computer. Let's next pivot and talk about the Zoom mobile application. Now, there is a lot of parity between the desktop client that we just covered and then the Zoom mobile application. So I'll cover a few of those nuances here. Like any application, you will first need to download that application in order for you to use it. And you'll navigate either to the App Store or the Google Play Store. And then you could do a quick search for Zoom in that Play Store. And then you'll be able to download the Zoom application for mobile. You will need to sign in with SSO in order to begin using the application on your mobile device. And that is screenshot on the right-hand side here. You would enter in your USC Net ID and then your password, and then you could click go to get signed in. Once signed in, you will see the view that that I've screenshot here for you. A few of these tabs should be quite familiar from the desktop client, but I'll quickly give you a little rundown of what to expect. You have the history at the top, all your call history, incoming, outgoing, as well as any missed phone calls. Clicking the little down caret here by all history allows you to filter your call history. You have the voicemail tab, which will have all your voicemails that you've received. Your lines tab, which will include your line and any shared lines that have been delegated privileges to you, as well as the SMS function for text messaging. As discussed earlier, clicking the three-dot ellipses here does allow for additional options. For example, calling someone back, copying the number, viewing their profile if they are a USC Zoom user, deleting that entry item, and then clicking cancel here to cancel out from that window. You could also leverage the phone button here, which will take you to another section of the platform, which will allow you to dial out and as well as manage some of your day-to-day phone calls too. Under the voicemail tab, very similar to the desktop client, as long as they are a USC Zoom user, you will see their first and last name, extension, date and timestamp, the transcription of their voicemail. You could call that user back. If you do have a Bluetooth device, you could have that Bluetooth synced up with your mobile through the Zoom application on mobile. You can delete that voicemail. Clicking and holding that blue circle will allow you to fast forward or rewind. The shared line section here is where you will see your line as well as any shared lines that have been delegated to you. Icon at the top here is the dial pad, which you can use to make outgoing calls. And when you click that dial pad, this is the view that you'll see here, very familiar from a lot of the interfaces that you would be accustomed to on your mobile device. But something I do want to call out is this little contacts button here. When you click that contacts button, it's going to allow you to, again, operate like a Google search and search for a user, either first or last name within the contact database that we have integrated with USC and the Zoom application. On the bottom, you'll see the caller ID, which will be your outbound caller ID that users will see when you are making phone calls. When you click that down caret here, it's going to open up the caller ID window. And because you have, let's say, a shared line here in this example, you could call out from your direct number or call out from Tyler's direct number. That covers the mobile application. Next, let's talk about the sign-in and configuration on the Zoom web portal. Now, the best way to describe the differences between what we just covered on the Zoom desktop client, the tool that you'll use every day for phone and meetings and otherwise, as well as the Zoom mobile application for on-the-go Zoom use. The web portal, on the other hand, is not what you're going to be using for everyday purposes of making and receiving phone calls, managing call queues, or even really launching meetings or joining meetings. It's going to be the location that you'll go to configure some of the advanced settings for Zoom based on your account. Now, the best way to describe it, it is the engine room. So it's going to be where you're going to be configuring basically your personal Zoom experience. So let's talk a little bit about that. You will need to log in to usc.zoom.us. And again, logging in through SSO via your USC Net ID and then password, and then clicking sign in. We do recommend leveraging Google Chrome as your default browser. It works and plays very nice with our web portal. But once you have been logged in through your USC Net ID and password, you're going to see the view that you see here on the left-hand side. Under the personal section, this is the settings and configuration unique to your Zoom account. You likely won't see admin here located at the bottom. This is only for USC Zoom admins. So if you don't see admin, it's likely because you're not listed as an admin in the Zoom tenant. However, you will see the personal section from profile all the way down to settings. And we're briefly going to take a moment here to discuss the phone button. If you do not see the phone button, I would definitely reach out through your standard operating procedures for support over at USC, and a member of the USC technical team can do some research there to make sure a license has been provisioned to you. Once you click the phone tab, you'll see the quick settings of your extension for Zoom Phone. And these are a one-time setup. So you'll have the ability to set your country and area code, your time zone, and then your PIN code to listen to voicemail by telephone. Once you've configured all of those, you would click setup, and then that first time setup screen will be removed. Don't worry if you put in the wrong country code, the wrong area code, the wrong time zone, accidentally hit 2 9s when you meant to hit 2 0s for the PIN. I'll show you where you can go next to make those adjustments on a need basis. So let's click setup. Once you click setup, you will see history all the way down to settings, and we're going to be primarily focusing on the settings tab for the remainder of this particular section. You'll have your company information and your phone numbers at the top. The emergency address here, this has already been configured for you, but we do recommend adding a personal emergency address. This would be viable for anyone that may be bouncing around from home to work and using Zoom Phone in both locations for hybrid work environments. So quite important for the purposes of routing emergency services to your location. Here is that country code and area code we found on the quick start settings at the very beginning for that one-time setup. To edit something, you would just click the edit button and then you could adjust the area code as needed. Below that is your business hours. You can set your business hours throughout the week by simply clicking the edit button. When you click the edit button, it will open up the days of the week, and then you can set the intervals of times for your business hours on a daily and or weekly basis. Below that is call handling. So that is going to help allow the calling workflows to be routed correctly. We do have the default there to Zoom applications. So don't make any adjustments to that. Otherwise, you may not be able to make and receive phone calls So just make sure to keep that as the default, which is Zoom applications. You'll be able to set your call handling ring mode as well as your max wait time. I oftentimes get questions on what is max wait time and what is the best practice. Max wait time is when someone is trying to reach you. How long do you want them to be on the phone while the phone is ringing before an action is taken? Best practice is 30 seconds. However, you can increase or decrease that based on your preference. However, once you have selected the max wait time, there is the ability to set a call to action. So after that 30-second max wait time, what do you want the end user experience to be for that person that tried to reach you? The best practice here would be to forward to voicemail. And I've got some slides here in just a moment on how you create a customized voicemail greeting. In the background, you'll see that max wait time that we just covered. We set the call to action here for when a call is not answered. We would like the next appropriate action to be forward to our voicemail. And then because we selected forward to voicemail, another option will be available to you, and that is going to be the voicemail greeting. Adjacent to the default drop-down box, you'll see the audio library. And if you click that blue hyperlink for audio library, it's going to open up this audio library window. You would then click add audio, and it's going to give you 3 different options. The first is text to speech. So you could put in the text that you want the robotic voice to play back when a voicemail is prompted. You can select the voice as well as the gender. Next is record by computer. So if you would like to set a personalized voicemail greeting, which I would encourage you to do, you could click the record button, which will allow you to record yourself. And then after that recording has been compressed and filed, you can then listen back to that recording before clicking add and then save, which will then create that customized voicemail greeting in real time for you and save it. You do have the ability to upload a file as well. So if you have an audio file on your computer that you would like to leverage, you could upload that to the upload section, click add and then save, and then it'll update your voicemail greeting in real time. Continuing to scroll down the page under phone and then settings, we do have holiday list and call handling. By clicking add, you'll be able to add in a specific holiday or sets of holidays based on maybe the academic year over at USC, or similarly the calendar year. You can enter in the holiday name, date range for that holiday, and then click save. Now, we briefly talked a little bit about line delegation. So in the desktop client, as well as the mobile application for Zoom, you saw under the lines tab, your line and then shared lines. Now, there is a backend workflow that will push that to the desktop client and the mobile application. And that's going to be available under delegation and assistant. You would then assign delegation privileges to a user, which you could also set it to a group. But in this example, let's just imagine a user, and then you're going to enter in the user's name, email, or extension, and then it's going to draw based on what you input in that search field from the directory sync that we have with USC via Zoom. And then you can then select the user that you would like to provide delegation privileges to. Once you have selected that user, you have an additional section here where you can define what delegation privileges you would like to give that user access to. So in this example, we're giving Sean the ability to place calls on our behalf, answer calls on our behalf, as well as pick up calls on our behalf. You don't have to select all 3. You can select 1, 2, or in this example, give access to all 3. Now, on the delegated privilege side for the user that you just gave those privileges to, our former workflow is that they would have to accept that delegation request. That is no longer needed. So as soon as you add that user into the delegation assistant in your web portal, it automatically provides those delegation privileges to the user that you would like to give them to. However, when that secondary user, the user that you gave those delegation privileges towards, when they log into those Zoom web portal, they may see a little pop-up here on the bottom right-hand side that just indicates to them that they have a new delegation request, but no action will be needed on their behalf. If at any point in time you would like to delete delegation privileges to anyone, just go back to delegation and assistant, find the users that you have delegated privileges towards, and then click the X there next to each, and you'll delete that delegation. Continuing to scroll down the page under phone and then settings via the Zoom web portal, you will also see this section here for the PIN code. So this was a reflection of what we covered at the quick start launch where you were configuring the one-time setup. This PIN code here allows you to set that for voicemail by telephone. You can show or edit that. Now, something to note here is tying back to the line delegation component. Although you've given, let's say, a user the ability to make calls on your behalf, pick up calls on your behalf, and so forth, it doesn't give that user the ability to listen to your voicemail. So when providing those delegation privileges, if you need to provide additional access to voicemail, you're going to go under the Others section in the web portal, navigate to voicemail, and then you're going to click Add, enter in the user's name, and then you'll be able to have granted access to that user. Just make sure that you provide your PIN code to that user so they can check your voicemail on a need basis. Below that is block lists. So we covered a little bit about spam calls, marking those as spam through the call history section of the desktop client as well as the mobile application. But there was that other reasons dropdown under spam. So if you block any callers for other reasons and you want to see that blocked list, you would go into the Zoom web portal, scroll to the bottom under settings and then others, and you'll see your blocked list. You can then view or edit all of the numbers that you may have blocked. So if you made a mistake, you could go in and then edit that user and remove them off the block list. However, you can take it a few steps further. So if you only want to block calls without caller ID, we do have a setting here defaulted to off. You could toggle this to the right, and now you'll be able to block calls without a caller ID. So some advanced settings there for your block list as needed. Some further callouts here is regarding hold music. So if you want to set some of your hold music, we do provide a default. You can also select from our library and then your audio prompt language, which defaults to American English. But if you prefer a nice savvy British accent, you can select that from the drop-down option as well. All right. Now let's talk about emergency services. So this will take us back to the Zoom desktop application where we were talking about the settings section, which was available under your profile and then the settings gear. Under the phone tab here, you'll see location permission. And then the call to action for you guys will be to allow Zoom to access your location. When you hover your cursor over that question bubble, this is the disclaimer that it will provide to you. This is going to allow Zoom to assist routing emergency services to your location for the purposes of responding to emergency phone calls. So rather important call out there regarding that particular setting. Now, if by some rare oddity, when configuring or messing around or checking some of the boxes here for the settings section of the desktop client, if you're prompted for an admin password, just again, follow your standard operating procedure for contacting local IT support over at USC, and they'll be happy to assist. Now, when using the Zoom desktop application, and if you are in the phone section here, if you are ever prompted with no emergency address detected, this likely means that the emergency address that you have defined at the web account level for the Zoom web portal or within the settings section of the desktop client, those two locations aren't actually correlating to where you currently are. The Zoom application is detecting that you're at a new location outside of the ones that you have defined. So if you go to a new location, and let's say you're going to be working there recurring, or maybe it's just for the day or so, I would encourage you to add that emergency address for that new location. You'll be able to add in that personal emergency address, country, street address, and so forth, and then click submit. God forbid, in the case of an emergency and you need to call 911, based on you adding that new personal emergency address, it'll then route emergency services to that new location. Finally, resources and support. There are endless materials out there for Zoom Phone. The first is going to be the Trojan Learn tutorials, which you can find available on your institutional website. This also covers Zoom Phone application setup, outbound calls, incoming calls, call options, SMS conversion, advanced setting and features, as well as some desk and conference room phone information as well. Second to that is also the Zoom support landing page. So you can search through our knowledge base center for support related topics in tandem with usc.edu/Zoom phone. We also provide quick start guides, video tutorials, which are 1 to 2 minutes, very high level information if you need some advanced, maybe on the go resources for dialing a phone number or otherwise. We have some short brief videos as well. Last call out here is for submitting tickets. Please always include the following. So navigate to usc.edu/Zoom phone and then support. Add in the impacted users, any screenshots that you may have, the details, for example, date, time, duration, and then any error codes that you may be seeing. And that covers everything. Thank you very much for your time and attention today for Zoom Phone user training.